We will be going over how to adjust and set up your accessories and guides for this machine. We're going to start off by setting up our hem guide. We have our three main parts right here in our guide. We're going to take this collar and slide it on, and then we're going to take our little collar. This is our set pin. You can see there's a little pin setting up. That's always going to be facing to the left. We're going to slide that on. So now we have something that looks like this. Everything's loose. We're going to slide this in, and we're just going to eyeball it, looking through that hole to get it pretty close to where this outside wall is against the outside of this weld roller. Once we're in that position, I'm going to lock it down with this bolt right here. And then when lowering the wheels, we're going to turn the speed to 0 and delay all the way up to 10, just so the wheels aren't going to swing in and grab it. And I'm going to get prepared to lock this down. I'm going to look in through the bottom. See how that swings in without hitting? I'm good to lock down this bolt. Now that we have our guide partially adjusted, not making contact with the top or bottom of the guide, we still have a little bit of a gap between the edge of the wedge and the guide, about 1/4 inch. What that will do is leave a 1/4 inch pocket on your hem. There will be a little bubble throughout your seam, so we want to try and get that a little bit closer together. How I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull this out a little bit, and I'm going to lock this down and make a little adjustment so I keep my level the same. Lock it down, and now we'll take another look. And we are just right up against that. Now that we have our guide aligned to where the edge of our wedge is pretty close to the inside wall, we're not making contact with the top or bottom of the guide. Now we are going to adjust how much material is going to fold over. Rule of thumb is that you're going to want this edge to be lined up with the outside of this roller. So I'm going to loosen these. And I'm going to slide this bar over just to where I'm about lined up. Now we won't know for sure until we run a piece of material through, but this is going to be pretty close to what we want. Now that we got our guide aligned, let's run a piece of material through and see what we're getting. See if we need to make any other adjustments. I'm going to roll it over. I'm going to pinch the front, lock it underneath the wheel. I'm going to look down this edge, and you want to see it pretty much lined up with the outside of this wheel. If you need to make adjustments for that, like if your material doesn't make it to that edge, you can push these back, and then if you have too much material, you can pull these 2 bolts closer to you. So you can see here, I have this flap. I need to bring these bolts back to me a little bit. So I'm going to loosen the one, and I'm going to push it just a hair. Now we'll run the other side and see how that flap looks. You can see now, no flap. And we're getting a good strong weld. Now that we have our guide completely set up, we can take it out when we're not using it, and we'll always have this preset. So you can take it out and in as you please, and it will stay aligned. Now we are going to be setting up our pocket guide. Pretty similar to the adjustable hem guide. We're going to slide these pieces on to start. We're going to place in the position, and now we're going to look at this edge right here, and we're going to try to eyeball that up to the outside of this wheel. So I want this edge of this slot with the outside of that wheel. Once we get it somewhere close, we can lock this down so we're not moving left and right. And now I'm just going to lift this up, swing my wedge in, and see if we make contact. So we're scraping the bottom. I'm going to lower it a little bit. Now we're making no contact. I'm going to lock this down. Now with this one, you want to make sure it's really squared up and very tight. So now that we're in a pretty good position, I'm going to lock down our preset collar, and we're going to run a sample. Now let's load a piece of material into the guide, roll it around, and let's run it and see how we're aligned. So you can see our 1-inch weld. So now we are going to be setting up our panel edge guide. This is going to be for applying reinforcement to the edge of your banners, a weldable webbing. First step is going to be putting your collar on. Then we are going to slide this in to where it's flush on the back side and lock it down. We're going to set this one up a little bit differently than the other guides. So lock down that collar so it's in that position, and now we're going to build from that. After we have this on, we're going to grab our panel and then our welded together collars. We're going to slide these on like this. And this edge of this panel you're going to want about right there, right against the edge there. So once in this position, we can level it out. Now, just like the other guides, we might have to make an adjustment later on. I'm going to swing our wedge in just to make sure we don't make contact. And that's looking pretty good. Now that we have that set, we're going to move on to our back guide. So these are adjusted for 1 inch to help hold our 1-inch webbing. We're going to slide this guy in, and this is actually going to go behind the machine. So you can see where it sits right over that weld roller. So I want it to fall right over there, and then I'm going to tilt it back just a hair. Now, depending on your webbing, you might need to create some tension, additional tension with this to keep things running straight. But for the most part, we're going to be dropping in through there, going over this wheel into this guy. You don't want it touching that weld roller. I'll line this up and then lock that down. We are going to be installing our webbing now. I'm going to take off this clamp collar, take off our Lexan disc, and also pull off our core. I'm going to place our core inside here. Sometimes it's a tight fit, but in the end, you want it to slide on just like that. Put your Lexan disc back on. Put your clamping collar, and lock it down. We will take this webbing and guide it over this hook, then back down. Then we are going to enter our first piece of the guide. After feeding it through this top piece, we're going to go along the wheel and down underneath. Pull a little piece through, put down the wheel, and now we'll see if we have it aligned. Throw it in this panel, lift up the wheel, place it under, turn my speed up. We're going to go a little bit slower now. Webbing is a little bit thicker and we'll need a little bit more heat. Cut your webbing. And that's what you want to see. You can see it's right down that edge. If you have a little bit of a lip here, you can adjust this panel left and right. That's going to hold you in position. The goal is to be against the edge of there.